Good afternoon, everybody. Let me just pull up the right things here before we get cracking. Welcome. So here we are. Good afternoon and welcome everybody from wherever you are from and viewing from. And welcome to my webinar on pricing strategies for recovery. I'm delighted to be hosting this webinar today. Last week, I hosted one on the same topic and we had attendees from over 25 countries. It was an international group and it made me think that despite the challenges we all have right now, it's great to see the way that individuals around the world are brought together through adversity and crisis. We find ourselves today in turmoil. After 12 weeks in crisis, businesses shutting down and hundreds of millions of us having to lock down, we are in new territory. How do we go forward from here? The financial crisis in 2008 was severe, and this is likely to be far worse. How do we manage our businesses? And importantly, how do we strategically plan for the next phase? We are entering the recovery phase, and today's webinar is going to look at ideas and strategies for pricing your business as we go forward. Before we go deeper, I wanted to share an article I saw yesterday online about the SME sector across Europe. Whilst it said that 82% of SMEs had suffered over the past quarter, and over 75% said the next 3 months were going to be tough, there seem to be some green shoots. The report says these businesses remain optimistic in the longer term, and many believe opportunities are out there to leverage. So how are you going to plan for the next phase? The next hour or so will mainly focus on B2C, business to consumer businesses, although much of what we'll cover will be relevant to B2B. Many of the psychological pricing triggers that are part of the way we live now are embedded into the B2C model, linked to things and services we buy. I'm going to take a deeper dive into the B2B pricing strategies another time, but for today, we remain more in the consumer-facing world. First, a few ground rules for the next hour or so. I put you all on mute and unmute you at the end of the Q&A session. If you want to turn off your video, that's fine. Some of us don't like to see our own picture on screen. Please keep your question to the end, but feel free to write any comments in the comments section as we go along. I'm going to be speaking for about 45 minutes, and then we'll open up the floor to questions. So I won't have a hard close after an hour. I'm happy to continue to take questions after that. Session is recorded, and I'm going to email a copy of this to you all, as well as a copy of the slide deck. So let's get cracking. If you bear with me for 2 seconds whilst I fine-tune my IT skills to share screen. Just 1 second. Let's do that. Now, this is the sort of time that we all hoped we had an IT desk. Obviously, I don't have one. And right, move that one across. But for those who work for companies, you will be right, there we go. Right, got it. Right, perfect. For those of you who work for companies, you don't know how lucky you are. Anyway, let's go. Pricing strategies for recovery. This is what this webinar is all about, charging up your business. So let's move on. This sticks as well. We're really having some different changes today. Okay. Happens. It gets a little sticky with the screen share, but I think we're fine now. So my name is Chris Howard. I've had a recently, I would say, reasonably successful corporate career, and I've lived and worked in 6 countries: Italy, France, Germany, Switzerland. I come from London. I've lived in New York and Boston, and now I'm living in Barcelona in Spain. I've had a number of senior level roles in companies. I've been a managing director, I've been on the board and sales commercial director, to name a few. But it's not all corporate. I was brought up in a family business and have worked for some SMEs too. I've also been van driver and floor sweeper. So I have experience very much from the ground up. The important thing is I have been there and done it. I've made a lot of mistakes too. My mantra is never to make the same mistake twice. My expertise, my skill set is within consumer lifestyle brands, clothing, jewelry, luxury goods, with a strong international and digital bias. That doesn't mean that I only work in that space, but that's where I started. I began at Burberry on the shop floor selling raincoats, and later I moved up from the shop floor and worked in senior sales roles in B2B at Calvin Klein underwear, Swarovski and Guess jeans. I've fast-tracked new businesses 3 times in the last 12 years to create multi-million-pound businesses. I've got experience across a wide mix from turnaround, startup, rapid growth, but also restructure and crisis management. In August of last year, I decided to leave the corporate world and move to Barcelona from London to join my wife and where she works, and set up Global Leap, where I work with clients both across Europe and more widely. Pricing, though, has really interested me for some time. I began to realize that the most effective tool is pricing, and that we have in the toolbox to drive profit growth. I had an aha moment a few years ago when I appreciated the importance of value-based pricing, which is such a part of premium branding. I originated from a manufacturing background, with my mind was stuck in a cost model basis. The mist cleared and I became a convert. There were quite a few geeky pricing experts, I think, out there, and I apologize if you are one of them. And I don't pretend to be one, but from a commercial aspect, and that's where I come from, it's clear that pricing has a direct effect on profit. And as I was being paid a bonus on how much profit I made, I realized that was the lever I had to pull. So what does Global Leap do? Essentially, we work with startups and SMEs up to around about £50 million or euros to enable them to scale their businesses by 20% a year. Yeah, that's a big claim. How do we do this? We focused on 3 core areas. Firstly, identifying clear long-term pricing strategies. Number 2, identifying new channels to market. And thirdly, sharpening the saw of commercial and sales capability. Having built substantial businesses for Swarovski, Guess jeans, and actually more recently, the UK Royal Mint, by pulling these 3 levers, getting your pricing right, having a high-performing sales capability, and getting to profitable new markets, I've adapted this model for the smaller SME sector. Today, we're going to be talking about pricing strategies relating to crisis and economic turmoil. You are all involved in business ventures, so large and small. I hope some of the stuff that we discussed today in some way will resonate and benefit you. I'm going to split the session into 2 parts. The first will show how often we follow the herd, take action without thinking. This is particularly the case for pricing, as businesses take 1 or 2 knee-jerk pricing decisions without thinking of the consequences. The second is going to focus on ideas and strategies for the recovery and how to make your business more profitable. It's all about leading, not following. So you as a business start to play on the front foot, not the back foot. And for those of you who stay till the end, and I hope you all will, I'm going to cover premium pricing as well. This is a channel that many businesses seem to want to aspire to. As you'll see from my background, it's an area I know well, and I'm going to show you a few tips on what to do and what not to do. So let's move on. The price is the balance between how much a buyer is willing to pay for something and how much the seller is willing to sell for. This graph is important, and it covers the basic principles of economics, and it shows the demand curve. It shows a curved line in purple, which we're going to call the demand curve, On the left axis, the up and down, we have price. And the bottom axis, left to right, we have quantity. In a normal situation, there is a balance between the supply of a product and the price we pay. So, for example, here in Barcelona, my local supermarket, half a kilo of fresh strawberries cost about it cost €1.20. And they've been that way for months, 2 months. There is a balance between the supply of those strawberries and the demand. But as soon as the supply dries up, the demand will continue and the price will go up. It's a very simple methodology. But in times of crisis, things change and demand goes out of balance. Suddenly we have either too much of a product and a drop in demand. Think of all the summer clothes in the shops right now after almost 10 weeks of no business. Prices will drop heavily as soon as they open in the next week or two. That's because shops need to get their cash back into their business, and that's fine. But also remember the rush for hand sanitizer and toilet rolls in early March. There was far more demand than supply, and in many cases, prices went through the roof. Now, I'm going to touch on that latter point a little bit later, because there's a point which is something quite close to my heart as to how brands are reacting to that. But lockdown has produced some big successes. And for those businesses that have been in the right place at the right time, they've done well. Many supermarkets and food shops are well up on sales from before crisis. Let's look at a few success stories. It's not all gloom and doom. Premium products, it's interesting to see, and certain sectors have also been doing well. So it's not just people looking for the cheapest. Home baking, bread, cakes, biscuits, it seems we've all been baking. Bread machines, not shown here. In Bed Bath & Beyond, a major retailer in the US, sales have been up 400% online. That's mirrored in other retailers in Europe as well. Personal grooming, hair scissors, beard trimmers. We've all, they were up, that sector's been up 228% at John Lewis online since lockdown. We've all become personal groomers. Home gym equipment, 170% up in Amazon. Luxury space, it's surprising. This might surprise you. Peloton. Peloton is a bike. It's like a bike you get at the gym. It's an exercise bike, but it's plugged into the internet. It's a tech one. It's got a screen, and you can connect with everyone in the world. For those who've got a lot of money, these have become a have-to product, and the lockdown has really driven demand for these. And as a result, the share price has gone up 20%. So look up Peloton. Even out of interest, it's a great product. Unfortunately, it's not really available to most of us. It's around about £2,000-3,000 for the bike before you start. Wine up 33%, which is probably understandable, but that is a case across various markets. Athleisure, athletic leisure wear. It's what we all tend to wear, whether we go to the gym or not. We want to look like we have been. Lululemon is online. That's well up. Nike up 38% in March, and Puma the same. And of course, Scrabble, games, etc. It's not just B2C. Let's look at B2B. I'll do a quick run through here. And some of these have done well as a result of COVID as well. It's tech-led, as you might suspect. Communication channels such as Zoom, Microsoft Teams have, frankly, they've changed the way we operate as a business. Look at what we're doing now. We're not meeting. We're operating online. Cloud-based IT systems have enabled businesses to pivot from being office-based to home-based almost instantly. I was on the phone to my bank recently in the UK, First Direct, and one of the customer services team told me they had moved 2,000 customer services staff from a call center to operating at home within 2 days without a break in service. That was possible because they had cloud-based IT systems that are able just to pick and drop and make happen. That's the way we're going to be in the future. I think they pivoted their business. The Hut Group, the owner of MyProtein and other health-related, let's say gym-related items. This business had a massive surge in demand due to lockdown, but its supply chain and getting this protein and getting other equipment as well was really badly hit from Asia because of lockdown. So they couldn't get any product in. In April, it partnered with Singapore Airlines, and it secured 2 dedicated cargo planes so it could guarantee the supply of goods. The business believes that more and more brands are going to do the same in the future. I know the big players like Amazon already have their own planes, but you might see a consolidation of this as they tidy up their supply chains. Cloud kitchens, renewable energy, and distribution. These are all areas that have done well, but some businesses haven't done well. In fact, 80% haven't, and you may be one of those businesses. So we're going to be looking at some of the things that people do, which are knee-jerk, and others that help them with that recovery. First of all, though, I want to conduct a quick poll. And this is going to pop up on your screen in a minute. And I'm going to ask you a very simple question. What would be your preferred option? Imagine you're a sales manager and you've got to make this decision on how to drive your sales. A price reduction, but you're going to retain the same volume. Price reduction of 5%. Retain the same volume. Or you're going to reduce the volume by 5%, but we're going to retain the same price. So what is your strategy? I'm going to take this and I'm going to turn on the polling in a second, okay, now. And that should come up on your screen now. Good, okay. So you have now 20 seconds, 15, 20 seconds just to vote. I can see you're starting to vote. Great, excellent. Stop, okay. Right, I'm going to close the poll now. I'm not going to share it with you. For the one reason is I just wanted you to keep that in mind as to what you chose, option A or option B. And the reason is, I'm going to show you some scenarios where you can make up your own mind as to whether you did the right thing or not, and that might focus your mind going forward. So let's just keep your results in mind. Next, we're going to talk about 2 car brands. And this example comes from a guy who is actually an expert in pricing consultancy called Hermann Simon. He's a German guy who went on to found Simon Kucher in Germany. Anyway, in one of his books, he told this story of 2 car brands, and I'm going to relate it to you. So in 2005, General Motors were in trouble. Their market share was slipping. They've been market leaders in the US for decades, for a long time, in fact, since the beginning. And the sales team were heavily incentivized, or frankly fired, by how much market share they increased, or to the negative, they dropped or lost. In April 2005, sales had dropped by 7.4% over March. In May, they slipped again by nearly 5%. They needed some action fast. The head of sales was being pressurized by his boss, and frankly, if he didn't turn things around, he probably wouldn't have a job very long. So instead of their standard discount or cashback, they decided to offer a discount normally reserved for employees. This was a big discount. It was amazing. So the new promotion started on June the 1st, and it ran for 4 months. The sales in June were phenomenal. They were up 41% on the previous year. July, 19.8%. It was fantastic. It was like, this is what to do. August, sales started slipping, and they did again in September. By October, they were in negative territory again. So we'll go back as to what happened there, but where did these new customers come from? So had they taken customers from competitors? They dug down a little bit. They realized that the customers hadn't come from their competitors. They'd come from the future. And effectively, they borrowed customers from the future. Customers who would have bought in November, December, and January had actually bought now because the deal was so good. So they bought the same car that they would have done later in the year. But hey, they got a great deal. The fact is the company made a big loss of margin, but there you go. So it won't surprise you that they lost money. In fact, by the end of the year, they had lost 10.5 billion for the year. A huge amount. It gets worse, actually. And by 2009, a year after the financial crisis hit, they filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. They had no cash left in the bank to weather the storm. What went wrong? A number of things, maybe. But a fundamental error is they discounted too heavily. They depended on a big uptick in volume. They believed 41% increase was fine, but it was not enough to compensate for the loss of profit. Porsche, though, they had a different strategy. In 2008, when the luxury car market came to an abrupt halt after the collapse of Lehman Brothers, they took a different approach. So being a luxury brand, they were keen to protect it. Plus, over 70% of Porsche cars ever made are still on the road. So they had a great second-hand market and they need to protect that. They decided to reduce production instead of reducing prices and the associated costs, and they dropped those by 10%. They kept their prices the same. Their view was that if somebody wanted to buy a Porsche, they'd buy one anyway, whether it was this month, next month, or the future. And so a big discount would only reduce margins. And what was the result? The result, Porsche came through the financial crisis without losing much money. 10 years later, a highly successful aspirational car brand as it was before. So I ask you again, would you reduce your prices by 5% and keep the same volumes? Or reduce your volumes by 5% and keep the same price? Let's look more closely at the price-volume ratio. Let's assume you manufacture, market and distribute a premium electric scooter, which sells for €1,000. You are the sales director and you are keen to make sure your brand stays number one. Your boss wants you to have the biggest market share in the premium sector of the scooter market, and you've got to keep it. You've had a good year. And you and your team have sold 10,000 units and you're on target to get a bonus. But you're under real pressure from your boss. He wants more. He wants another 20% before the year's finished. And he's come up with you, said, right, okay, just go and figure out a way to do this. And you sit down at your desk and start to pen through a few ideas. And the most logical thing is offer a discount. That's what we all do. Let's have a discount and see if we can drive the sales. So you start working on some numbers here. And if we look at this next slide, you'll see three columns. Now on the left hand with the orange heading, we'll see the standard model that we've just been looking at. So price is €1,000, volume is 10,000, that's what you sold, gives you a nice turnover of 10 million. Our direct costs, those are the costs of making the bike, are 600. Gives us 400, that gives us 4 million in GP, gross profit. Our fixed overheads, that's our office, our staff, our website, our stores, our everything. Those are fixed overheads, they're 3 million. But it gives us a nice 1 million profit, 10%, very nice, thank you very much, we'll take that. And that pays my bonus too. That's what we've been doing. My boss wants more sales. If we offer 10% discount, clearly 10%, okay, run it through. Comes down to €900 instead of 1,000. Direct costs are the same though. GP drops. Fixed overheads are the same. Right, if we carried on doing that for a year, we'd make no profit. And that's not really going to work. But also 10% is not going to work. 20% is what we need. We need a bigger discount. So 20% discount, run it through again. We lose €1 million. Wow, where'd that come from? Price is now 800, but we're only making 2 million GP. Fixed overheads stay at 3 million. So clearly I can't do that. You're the sales director, I'm the sales director too. We can't do that, can we? So we've got to come up with some other thoughts. I know what I'll do. It's the logical thing. This is what we always do. If we're going to lose profitability, we've got to drive the volume up, because there's a direct correlation between the two. So I'm sure I can do another 20% discount. I'll probably do another 35% increase on business. So then I start penciling in on my spreadsheet and doing some numbers, and this is what I get. The middle column looks a little different. Now, this shows how much more volume I have to do in order to bring back my profitability. And it shows if I offer a 10% discount, I have to give 33%. I have to get 33% more volume of sold. So I have to sell another 3,333 in this promotion. I don't think 10% discount is going to do that either. But I have 20% discount. And I can't believe it. I'm looking at the numbers here. I have to double my volume in order to achieve the profit that I would have lost by giving a 20% discount. I can't afford to do that either. And there's no way that my customers, no way that my sales team would be able to achieve a 100% increase in volume sales. So, and I'm not going to get a volume, I'm not going to get a bonus. So as sales director, you would need to work on a wider number of options to stimulate sales instead of discounting. Which leads me on to this slide, is how many options do you have? Often a business does not have enough options. Where are they? And what are the different triggers and levers you're going to pull in order to drive your business forward? And these are pricing options. Discounting is a straight pricing option. As a sales director, you need to have options in your toolkit rather than just depending on discounting. Let's briefly look at price wars. So nobody wins these. So my opinion and my advice is avoid at all costs. In 80% of the cases, the other party is blamed, so it's just a race to the bottom. Although it's not strictly a price war, let's look at the slanging match between Donald Trump and President Xi in China. I'm not sure anyone's winning these trade wars at the moment, and it seems a more sensible solution to me would to end them and start trading again. So my recommendation to you strongly is if your main competitor starts undercutting you, firstly regard it as a compliment that you're succeeding in competing, but then try to build a dialogue, but do not do the same. It could be a drive to the bottom and you risk your business going forward. This is a very topical slide for COVID, and this is profiteering. It's a very big subject of mine, and I believe that, you know, when we should be careful whenever this occurs. As the demand rises, supply is limited, so sellers feel tempted to raise prices and make more profit. While it's understandable to a degree, it's common with hotel bookings, airline flights, and Uber bookings that prices rise and drop due to demand. And we've seen that in Uber taxis, where the costs just go down and up, whilst, you know, nighttime, evening, and morning. But when price rises are excessive, sometimes well beyond 100%, then I really do question the moral right to do so. Much has been written about how brands have reacted to the pandemic, and one theme is consistent throughout, and I'm going to tell you this here. Consumers are going to remember those brands and businesses who've adapted their model to help combat the virus. Think of LVMH making hand sanitizer, Zara making protective equipment. Afterwards, those same consumers are going to punish those businesses that have taken advantage of short-term profit. Profiteering is taking short-term profit, but frankly, it's going to affect your long-term reputation. Do not do it, avoid it. We now move on to the second half of the session. So we're going to move on to how to recover. What is your value proposition? What do you stand for? Do you or your products give value to your customers? Do you have a USP, a unique selling proposition? And what is your value add? How do you stand out for the competition? Well, let's just look at some well-known brands that they have their value proposition. Lidl, Aldi, they are low-cost operators, retailers, very successful. Their value proposition, great value, always. Miele, washing machines, vacuum cleaners, a brand you can depend on. Very simple. It lasts for 20 years. Might cost 20 or 30% more than the competition, but that's what it does. And Apple, iPhone. Their value proposition, there's nothing quite like iPhone. It's true. That's what it is. How do you differ from your competition? So what we do with our clients is get them to list all the features and benefits of their main competitors. And this is what you should do as well. And list where you offer the same, more or less. Look at where you can find a point of difference, where you can add not just value, but additional price level. If you can't immediately find this, keep trying, keep getting and get creative and developing a unique offering. That's how we start working with clients. And you try to do the same too. Jumped ahead there. So I'm going to ask you, which brands do you feel had real value? Now I've come up with 4 well-known brands here, and you may have your own that you believe fit this category. 3 of which I believe deliver great value, and 1 I feel misses the target completely. So Spotify, to me, is a great example of a brand that delivers great value. For a small fee, I get access to the whole music library of over 50 million songs, plus podcasts, etc. Plus, I can share the whole account with my wife and my kids. Netflix, another great example of value, great value. Huge amount of content for a few euros a month. It's not surprising, we're all hooked on Netflix, and we're like square eyes after watching box sets in lockdown. Amazon Prime, I love this. Not only do I get free delivery all year, but also I get video and shopping offers. Now, it may interest you to know that Amazon make $9 billion a year in Prime subscription fees alone. And Prime users spend an average of $1,300 as opposed to $700 for non-Prime. That's nearly double the amount. So clearly that pricing mechanism works down well for them. But LinkedIn is a misnomer for me. It gives great service for its free option, but the moment you move into premium as a consumer, the value add is vague and expensive. And I, for one, and probably you as well, some of you, have dabbled for premium for several years, but always cancelled, as I don't get value from it. Frankly, I'm really surprised that LinkedIn, which is owned by Microsoft, have not found a better way to price their freemium offer. So what do you think? Here are 50 pricing strategies. There are probably another 50 more, but the main point is you have a lot of options. And I mentioned options earlier, and here are just 50. Not all will be right for everyone, every business. Some will be B2C and some will be B2B. But it's likely that some of these will work for you. So we encourage clients to find those that they feel comfortably and most comfortable fits with their business. So we can start building these into a strategy. Now, looking at the list here, there are 5 clear columns from left to right. The most common is on the left, and they're things like the cost plus margin, the time and materials. These are the basic standard ones where you just take your cost, you add a margin. Moving towards the middle, we get freemium. Dropbox is a great example of freemium. Freemium is where you get a free access to the service or the business. But when you want a little bit more, other than just the most basic services, you got to pay for it in a tiered and a layered subscription. There are lots of those too. But the area I'm going to cover today are on the far right, the psychological and the consumer-driven strategies. And these are more towards the B2C, and they're all the more towards the psychological and value-added solutions for pricing. So let's still drill down onto these 2 as well, which are decoy pricing and pricing as a quality signal. And those are 2 examples I'm going to draw out in the next couple of slides and show you really how these different strategies, they all have different applications. And some of these could be ways that you can develop your own businesses. So there's a great book called Predictably Irrational by Dan Ariely, who is a professor of behavioral economics at MIT in Boston. And he's done some research into how our brain makes irrational pricing decisions. Dan split his graduate class into 2 groups. He was given Group A, was given a 10-cent aspirin. They were told it was a budget level aspirin, and group B, a $2 aspirin, which they were told was premium. And they were asked to take painkiller over the next week and report back. Interestingly, those with the 10-cent aspirin reported a 65% success rate, and the $2 reported 85% success rate. What they didn't realize was the aspirin was a placebo. Even though the pill clearly had no medical benefit, students thought the better quality, more premium pill worked better. So he then did the same experiment, but changed it around with wine. So this time he marked 3 bottles with 3 labels, and he marked them $10, $20, and $40. With the Chilean Merlot on the left, $10, the cheapest, and the Californian vintage at $40. Even though the wine was exactly the same, more students preferred the $40 wine. So what is the conclusion on that? Well, the conclusion is this: people will spend more for a product they perceive as higher quality. Interesting. Dan also conducted another piece of research, this time on the Economist subscription model. Now, The Economist is a widely read economic magazine sold as a paper version and a digital version. Now, the established pricing model they have shows 3 options: an online version at €59, a print-only version at €125, and an online and print version at €125 too. Now, it's not a big surprise that the print-only version had no takers. But 16% of the online option was sold, with 84% of people going for the print and online option. Now, Dan decided to play around with the options, and instead of 3, he removed the print-only version to see if this would have any effect on people's decision-making process. And he made a controlled experiment of 100 possible new customers. Despite no one opting for the print-only version in the first scenario, when he took it away completely, 68% of people opted for the online-only version. Surprise. So only 32% in the print and online. It had changed completely. So when you work that out as well as to what the revenue difference is, so if we assume 100 people took option A and 100 took option B, the revenue is €11,500 for one A and 8,000 for B. Big, big difference. So what do we learn by this? We learn that by adding a decoy price, and that is what this is, the print only in the first option A is a decoy price, at or near the same level of another, but with a lower value proposition, people will subconsciously go for the better option. If you remove the decoy completely, people will opt for the cheaper variant. That's where it is. So decoys work. This also shows you can increase pricing without actually increasing your pricing. You're doing it psychologically. Very smart. Customer segmentation. Extensive research has shown that we all have different drivers and emotions before deciding to buy something. And we're often prepared to pay quite different amounts for the same service. So by way of example, I recently decided I wanted a new website. In my mind, I'd set a different price in my head as to what I wanted. I wanted a site that looked contemporary with great images, effectively reaching my audience and professionally pulled together. I had €1,000 in my back pocket and in my mind as the budget. I reached out to a number of web designers, and a couple of hours later, an eager sales manager called me and he asked me what my budget was. Now, when I mentioned €1,000 all in, he immediately said, "I do the whole project for you for $695. Clearly, I was delighted. And they did a great job. But the sales rep didn't listen to my willingness to pay and effectively left €350 on the table. So for me as a consumer, as a customer, it was a great deal. For the business, they lost €350. So looking at this and taking that into account, the fact is that people have different levels and they have different amounts that they are willing to pay for a product or a service. So you need to modify and change your offer around that. Now, looking at another business, a business services company, who essentially offer the same function, which is business services, to other businesses. They segmented their customer base into 3 clear bands. So they could tailor their offer by segment, which in turn is reflected in their willingness to pay. So they realized they had 3 types of customer: those who really had a low willingness to pay, a medium, and a high. And they tailored their offer around those 3. And that's what I would encourage you to do. Have 3 different offers and segment them and scale those across. We have a methodology that we work with clients, and I haven't got time to go through that today, but this is a very, very important model of getting, of fine-tuning your pricing strategy around the 3-tiered approach. So instead of discounting, what should you do? There are many things. You've seen the 50 choices. It's there. There are a lot of different options you can run with. But instinctively, you need to provide more value. If you're not providing value, you need to find a way to provide value. Consider bundling or debundle. Put things together, add them together, or take them apart. You can charge a premium for one of them. Create special, innovative offers. Change your payment terms. That's one of the most simple mechanisms for driving sales and a pricing mechanism for driving revenue, especially in these times, these difficult times. Offer upfront payment, spread it over 2 or 3 months. There are a whole number of mechanisms. And again, we work with clients on this as well. Test different pricing strategies, test them out, see what works for you, and reinforce your brand. So I hear time and time again that businesses want to operate in the premium space. They believe, rightly or wrongly, that these brands make better margins. They reach a more affluent customer. They enable a business to increase its perceived value. Now, I've sat in board meetings in the past where the discussion's been around raising the business to a premium offering, so it's much more attractive to investors. In fact, my CEO in my last company, that's what she wanted to do, was to raise the value and the perceived premium value of the business. German brands are the masters in this channel. Look at the car brands, I could number a whole load of them. But it's not quite as straightforward as we think, and you really need to understand first, before deciding to get into the premium space, how this whole luxury and premium sector is made up. So I'm going to endeavor to take you through in the next couple of slides how this is structured. Now, once we move away from low-cost operators to those businesses and brands that set out to dominate the market, we move into the sectors of premium and luxury. Now, there's some great work in this space that's being conducted by Dr. Robert Müller, who runs a consultancy called The Bridge to Luxury. And Dr. Müller I know fairly well, and he maps out 4 very clear positionings for this channel. But before I begin, I want to ask you a question. Would you consider Rolex as a luxury brand? Many people would say yes. Just think about that now. Is it a luxury brand? So Dr. Müller identifies 4 distinct sectors and quadrants: premium, prestige, prosumer, which is professional consumer, and luxury. How do these break out and what are the different triggers? Premium is product driven. That is its main driver. Prestige is status driven. Prosumer, professional consumer, is a connoisseur. And luxury is all about discretion, style, and refinement. But what does that mean? We drill further down into that. Premium is all about trading up, having limited volumes, added value, higher prices from the average. Look at those German brands: Miele, BMW, Mercedes. We're thinking jewellery. Swarovski would fit into that, for example. Prestige, upwardly mobile. New affluence. It's controlled distribution. You can't buy these products everywhere. And it's talking about emotional. It plays to your emotions. Porsche, Prada, Amex. Probably Tiffany, if it was a jewellery brand, would go into there. Prosumer. These are professional consumers, as I said. They want total performance, discovery. Hasselblad cameras. They're they're the best you can get. Cohiba cigars. Isabella Islay. It's a whiskey that sells for $6 million a bottle. It sells, people love it, they drink it. It's for the connoisseur only. Luxury, highest status, socially cruel. What do I mean by that? It means you can't have that many of them. They are so exclusive, there may only be 10 made. Brands like Patek Philippe, Asprey, Bentley. So the question I asked you, where does Rolex fit into that? Where do you think? Well, it would fit into prestige, and that's where it would go. It is an upwardly mobile new affluence. It's not actually in the luxury sector, but it's still in the premium upper levels. So if you want to build a premium brand offering for your business, these are the things you need to do. And I would say it's well worth doing, but it's not for the faint-hearted. You need to have limited distribution, minimal discounting. Be careful on how you discount. You will destroy your brand. You need to find other ways of adding value. You need to have a clear value proposition as to what you're doing. You need to be premium across all the touch points. So it's almost having, it's fine having a great premium accountancy service, but your front desk, your receptionist at the front is really rude to customers. It needs to be premium across all of those touch points. Thought leadership. And the most important thing is you are prepared to spend on marketing. Now, pure luxury will spend up to 30% of their whole turnover on marketing. If you go into the premium sector, you ought to spend at least 5%. Most of them spend 10. 5% is going to do it. But if you're a sales director, or if you're a finance director, or if you own the company and you say, I'm not doing that, that's ridiculous, you won't be able to build up a premium offering. So there you are. That's my little tip for 10 on premium and luxury positioning. Which leads me on to my final slide. My next webinar in the next couple of weeks is going to take a look at pivoting your business. How do you change your direction of your business in order to get through the next year and adapt your pricing model in order to do that? I hope you found this webinar useful and informative. So please tell your friends, colleagues, and anybody else who's interested in pricing and particularly within the more premium area. If any of you'd like a further chat or a discussion about your business, I'm absolutely open to speaking to you. Please email me. I act as a coach and a consultant, and I'm happy to talk to you about any specific needs that you may have under total confidence. I'm going to be sending a recording of this webinar and the slides, so email me if you haven't already got them. Check out my website, globaleat.global too. And that's it for today. So now I'm going to open up to the floor, and I'm going to turn off the share, and I'm going to turn off the recording.